Well, hello everybody. It's Brother Todd with your Victory Minute. I hope y'all all having a good day. They so loud in that office right now. Couldn't make this. And I went outside and the wind was blowing so hard I couldn't make this. So I ventured over here to the prayer room. And the reason I'm grinning is I've been waiting for about 10 minutes. People quit walking through that sanctuary making racket. They've been going through there singing. Thank God they're singing good stuff. They're talking and going on. I thought, boy, we are busy little people around here. I sat here for 5 minutes waiting on the kids to quit playing out on the playground outside that door from Victory Prep. So we just all over the place today. But anyhow, I hope you had a good weekend. I was during one of the Sunday services on Sunday. I mentioned John the Baptist being in the jail and how circumstances can get you down. Anyway, then this morning I was just happened to be reading through Luke and ran straight back up, wasn't even thinking about it, but run straight back up on the account of when John the Baptist was in the jail and he sent messengers to Jesus. And I thought, well, I hit that twice. Maybe God wants me to talk about it in a minute. So I got to looking at it there for a bit and thought I'd offer you this encouragement and direction from the Word. You can, your circumstances can be bad enough, but then your circumstances can lead you into sin. When we choose not to believe God for who He is, and when we get overwhelmed. Now, I'm not making light of it. It's easy to get overwhelmed in this world, but you can deal with circumstances and not lose your faith, and the faith is what really can carry you in the impossible situations, especially when we don't understand everything that's going on. What I mean, well, John the Baptist was in that jail and he sent word to Jesus through some of his disciples. And he said this. He said, are you the one we're looking for, or do we look for another? Do we need to go look for somebody else as a Messiah? Well, John already knew it. Now, let's don't throw old John under the bus too hard here, because Jesus said he's the greatest prophet born of women. I mean, God knew what pressure John was under, okay? But still doesn't mean he didn't lose sight of who he's supposed to believe in there. Anyway, so John asked, are you the one we're looking for? Do we look for another? And Jesus took kind of the day there with those disciples, and he just healed people all over the place. I mean, from leprosy to lameness to blindness. I mean, it's just everything was going on. And he kind of concluded it by telling him, he said, look, this is what's happening. The poor having the gospel preached to them. And happy, he used blessed, happy. Happy is the man that is not offended in me. And then they went back to tell John. Well, anyway, he said, Brother Todd, what does he mean by that? And what does that mean, offended in me? Well, the word literally means to stumble, okay? And not that you stumble because of me, but the reason offend is used is that it's used in the sense of like you stumble into sin, that you get tripped up and you offend, you make an offense. That's one of the primary words that sin, transgression means, is that we have offended God and we bring an offense towards God. We broke the law, as it were, okay? Guilty of an offense, okay? So what he told John is that the way you're going to be happy, and don't get me wrong, he was in a bad spot, but attitude is always, how do I put it? Attitude is always the choice of the individual, regardless of the position you're in. And people can put you in positions that they can take everything from you. We know this from the people that were in concentration camps and things. But like Corrie ten Boom said, who was in a concentration camp, that she learned through her sister that her attitude, not being moved to an attitude of hate, was her choice. That the Nazis could take everything from her, but they could not be in charge of her attitude. They couldn't be in charge of the decision she was making. And that's what Jesus was telling John is, one, and I'd leave you with, I want you to take these two things with me. One, let me be God. You let me be God. John wanted the agenda of God moved forward. One, he wanted out of the jail. Who could blame him? Okay. But he also wanted, of course, what the Messiah was going to do in the world. And what so many of them early Jews did not recognize is that so much of those promises, okay, about the Messiah were, obviously, if you study the Old Testament, a suffering Messiah and a reigning Messiah. And they tended to discount the sufferings of the Messiah and see the fact that one day he was going to reign, he was going to exalt Israel. They saw the same things you and I want to see, okay? And so what John is saying is, I want you to get about your agenda, because it's not happening. Well, it wasn't happening on John's timetable, okay? But the agenda of God was happening because Jesus was moving towards the cross, So John is saying, okay, if you're not going to do these things, do we need to look for somebody else? I'm confused. I don't know if he probably talked himself into that confusion, but it was definitely produced by the fact that God was not working out his agenda in the time frame that John wanted. Same thing that the disciples wanted on the day of the ascension. They wanted Jesus, are you right now going to restore the kingdom to Israel? And before we just, like I say, I always use the term throw them under the bus, but before we do that, we have to recognize in our own life that there are times when God will allow us to go ways, and he'll even allow things to happen in our life that we don't like, that we don't see in any way that God can use this. But in every one of those circumstances, there's an opportunity to believe God or not, okay? So we have to let God be God. Number two, do not allow, and here's what Jesus was really telling John, do not allow me, as God would be speaking here, do not allow what I'm doing, okay, to you come up to a point that you stumble into sin in it, okay? Because that's what John had done, okay? And happy is he's not offended in me, who doesn't stumble into sin because of me. Because one thing God does not do, he doesn't stop being God for people. He said it in Isaiah, I do not share my glory with another. In my life, I've had times where the circumstances of situations did not go the way I wanted them to go, okay? And there's been times, in those times, where I took what God allowed to happen into my life to cause me to stumble into sin. Because I began to question God. I began to question his love for me, his care for me. I didn't understand why he was allowing these things to happen. I remember one time hollering out to God, God, how could you let this happen to me? How could you let this happen? Why didn't you show me, right? And so all of a sudden, and it didn't last long, God corrected me. But the rage that I was feeling in that time, rather than saying, okay, God, before I was ever born, you knew about this moment. You knew what I was going to be facing, and I know you got a promise for it, and you wouldn't let me be here without you having a direction for it. See, that's the way I could have and should have responded, okay? Even like with old John, Lord, I don't know why you got me in this prison, but you know I want out, so I'm going to ask you to let me out, but I want your will to be done. And if I got to be in this jail for your son to be glorified, then I'm good with it. I just need your care, comfort, and grace. You following me? I'll say it like there was a time in my life, I ain't going to go into the details on it, but I got done wrong in a business deal, and it's cost me more money than what I thought was going to cost, and got cheated and all this kind of stuff. And I just blurted out. I said, Lord, how could you let this happen to me? Why, you're going to let these people mistreat me like this? Why didn't you show me? You see what this has done to me, And boy, I tell you, I cranked off there for a minute. Boy, I was just so mad. I was so mad about being cheated. And then I turned that anger right to God, because I know he's a sovereign God. He could have stopped it. He could have cut this thing off. There I went. And that's what the Lord's talking about. Don't let my circumstances take my blessing. Blessed is the man, right? Happy is the man, he said, okay? Why should I lose my blessing just because I'm dealing with difficult circumstances? It may be that the will of God can only be really carried out by God allowing things to come into my life I don't understand, okay? It can just be that God's allowing my faith to be tested so that it gets stronger. Now, God won't tempt you with sin, but he'll allow you to be tempted. James talked about it there in the Bible. And God will allow our faith to be tested. One, he already knows what it looks like, but more than anything, for us to know what it looks like so that we can respond in faith. I've talked to you a lot about when something happens in my life, I want to act out of my genuine belief and move towards God. But if I have to veer, if I go the wrong way and then veer over the right way, That is not me acting out of what I genuinely believe, because I'm genuinely believing temporary things, and then God has to correct me and bring me back the other way. And so sometimes God allows those circumstances so that our faith gets built. But what we don't want to do is have opportunities in life where we're going to have to trust God, and we're going to have to believe that God is good and that God is too good to be cruel. And if he's allowing these things to happen in our life, then ultimately he's going to work out his purpose, and he's going to bring us blessing, and he's going to help those that we love. And so, but to take those opportunities, one, not to trust him, but two, to let it lead us into sin. Okay? And it comes down to that old deal of faithlessness. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. There comes times in life where you're just going to have to believe God, you and me. And we're just going to have to believe him. And we're not going to see why, or we're not going to know how. Now, it's easy for me and you to look back over John the Baptist's life and look at the time and look at the circumstance and see that one of the reasons I believe myself that God allowed, like John the Baptist, allowed Joseph, Jesus' earthly daddy, to be removed from the scene, is so that there was no confusion moving forward about who Jesus was and what he was doing in the world. You said, Brother Todd, Joseph, we don't know what happened to him after Jesus was 12. I think he passed away. And from my studies. And as you see the agenda of God going forth. And so Jesus goes out and he talks about his father. Well, there didn't need to be confusion about who he was talking about. When he went forward and he did things, they were always trying to make John the Baptist to be the Christ. That confusion had to end. He said, well, Brother Todd, will God take them into death early, as it were? Well, guys, heaven's not a punishment. Think about it. Sometimes God does big things in our life to ultimately produce his purpose in the world that's going to ultimately be the best blessing. We don't understand a lot of things that God does. The secret things belong to God. I'm not going to sit here and tell you follow Jesus, you're going to understand everything, because you're not. But you're not going to understand why on everything. God will lead you to a lot of those things, but don't stumble into sin on it. Don't let a circumstance steal your faith. Say, preacher, you talked all that time just to say that? Yeah, probably could have said it in 30 seconds, couldn't I? Don't let your circumstances cause you to sin, because your choices that you make are not tied to your circumstances. And for sure, don't make that choice to be not to believe God, because it's in faith where we really have our power, and the just shall live by faith and not by sight. We are not bound by our circumstances. So study on that a little bit with me today. I pray that you have a good day, a blessed day. Trust God, you'll please God, and you'll be what? Blessed. Happy is the man that is not offended in letting God be God. And I pray that he'll lead you in a great and powerful way. Have a great day. Bye-bye.